Well, hey guys. Hope you guys had a good weekend. I know it's just really crazy and just lots of weird things. But hopefully this will provide some normalcy to you, which is doing your algebra videos. So, when I left you guys on Thursday, you were getting ready for your quiz that you should have taken by Friday, or before today. I have a few questions about some questions on the quiz, some problems on the quiz. So if you still have questions about some of those problems, you aren't able to do them, then shoot me a text on Remind or an email, and I'd love to help you out. But anyways, we're in the home stretch, okay? We only have a few more lessons to do, and then a review, and then the test. So, and this is the last real unit of Algebra 1. Can you believe it? We're almost there. Wow, what a year. Okay, so today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things. I know, I'm weird, I'm a nerd, but it is the quadratic formula. So we've been talking about these are quadratic equations because they have this x squared variable that makes a parabola, followed by an x and then a constant number. Alright, trinomials. So those are quadratics, okay? So the solutions to a quadratic, just a reminder, these are called roots, or zeros, or x-intercepts. Alright, so the solutions can be one of those three things. So how can we find the solution to x squared minus 2x minus 15? Well, it's a trinomial, so we're going to set it equal to 0. When we do that, we factor it using this last digit, which is a negative 15. So what are factors of negative 15 when added together would make a negative 2? So a 5 and a 3, a negative 5 and a 3, positive 3? Yeah. So that now gives us x minus 5 would be x equals 5, and this one would be x equals negative 3, right? So those are your two solutions right there. That's where they cross the x-axis. And, okay, so then now we're going to find the solution to 3x squared equals 6x. Alright, so what we need to do here is we need to set it equal to 0. So we got to move this 6x over here. So 3x squared minus 6x equals 0. So when you move it over, it becomes minus 6x on both sides. That cancels out, leaves 0 over here. Okay, so that's our new equation is this, 3x squared minus 6x equals 0. So here it's just a binomial. There is a GCF that we can factor out, and that would be a 3x, because they both have at least a 3 and an x in common. So when we factor that out, we're left with x minus 2. Okay, x minus 2. So, equals 0. So our two solutions are, we have to say 3x equals 0. So when you divide by 3, you just get x equals 0. That's one solution. And then x minus 2 equals 0. So that just ends up being x equals positive 2. Alright? So, let's see here. What if we can't factor it? What if we get something like this? This x squared plus 1x plus 1. There's no factors of 1 that when added together would equal a 1x. You could say negative 1 and 1, but that would be a negative 1. That's what that would equal when you multiply it. And it would equal 0. So you can't factor that. Cannot factor. So when we cannot factor something, today I'm going to teach you something that you can use, which is called the quadratic formula. You remember the parent function of a quadratic parent function is y equals x squared. But most of the time when we see it in a trinomial, it's in this pattern here. We have a whole number here in x squared plus a whole number here in this b spot with an x, and then plus another whole number, which by itself is just a constant. So that's the pattern you usually see. You can, and only if it's in the quadratic formula. That's the only way you can use quadratic formula. Not when it's a binomial, but only when it's a trinomial and you cannot factor it. And it has to be in this pattern. Well, that is this pattern. This is an x squared and the x and a number. Okay? So, if it's in that pattern, the solutions, to get the solutions to this, if you can't factor it, use this formula. Woohoo! This formula right here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you look at that and you're like, what the? Whoa. Okay, no need to get scary. You just plug in what you know into this formula. So if we look at this right here, this is your A. Your A equals 1. Your B equals 1 also. And your C equals 1. So if we were to do that, we could go down here and say x equals, we're going to plug in what we know, negative 1, because that's B, plus or minus the square root of b squared. What's b squared? 1 squared. Okay. Minus 4 times A times C. Okay, now they're not always going to be the same digit that we had today. And then all of that over 2 times A, which is 1. So we could say that's 1 squared. So negative 1 plus or minus square root of 1 minus 4, which equals negative 3. Okay, because 4 times 1 times 1 is just 4. And then all of that over 2. We're just simplifying that, okay? So, the square root of negative 3 all over 2. This is where you probably need a calculator. So the reason why it says plus or minus here is you'll do it one time using plus and get an answer, and that's one solution. And then you'll do it one time using minus, and that's your other solution. So we end up with 2 solutions, just like we did up here. 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 2. Okay? 2 solutions. So if I were to use this on a calculator, I don't have one handy. I'm going to pull one up on my computer here. Which, by the way, if you don't have a graphing calculator, you can use any kind of calculator to do this. But you also can download the app Calculator X, and that's kind of the rip-off free version of TI-83s that we use in class. Alright, so I'm going to do the first one. I'm just going to plug in my calculator, a negative 1, okay, plus, alright, well first of all, what I'm going to do, back up, I'm going to do the square root of, sorry, I'm trying to figure out this calculator. I'm using the computer here. The square root of negative 3, because I don't know that. Okay, it says it's an invalid input. We're just going to leave it here, okay? So you're going to have negative 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 3, square root of negative 3 over 2. And that's where we're going to stop for right now, okay? You could solve that if you had a calculator and you would get a decimal answer. But anyway, that's just what you do. You plug it in. Alright, so let's look at the next page of notes. Let's write in our quadratic formula. So you're going to memorize this formula. You're going to need to, because you're going to be using it on a test, and you'll need it in the future. So it is, please, sorry about that. My nail polish, I need to redo it. So no, don't touch me. Okay. Alright, so what was it again, if anybody remembers? Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and you're going to rewrite that a lot. So there's also a cool little song that I'm going to teach you later, not today, but I'll send it to you, and it can get in your head, but it will help you learn the formula. Alright, so let's look at this first one. X squared minus 2x minus 15. So let's just label what our A's, our B, and our C is. That's a good way to start. So our A is 1. This is your A. Here's your B. That's a negative 2. And your C is negative 15. So now we can plug in what we know here. Negative B. So if it's negative B, that makes that negative 2 now positive. 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 15 all over 2 times 1. Okay, all I did there was plug in A, B, and C into what our formula. Our A, B, what we have over here for A, B, and C. Okay, so when you do that, you get 2 plus or minus square root of 4, because negative 2 squared is 4, plus 60, because you get negative 15 times 1 is negative 15 times negative 4 is a positive 60. So that's where we get plus 60. Oops, divided by 2. Alright, so then I can come down here and I can say 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 60 is 64 all over 2. 2 plus or minus 8, because that's the square root of 64, all over 2. And now we're going to break it up. 2 plus 8 all over 2, or 2 minus 8, because it's plus or minus all over 8. And you get 2 plus 8 divided by 2 is going to be 5, right? Because that's 10 divided by 2 is 5. And then 2 minus 8 divided by 2 is going to be negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. So these are your two solutions right there. 5 and negative 3. So, yeah, it looks a little crazy, but we can do this. Okay? Now, I told you that you're normally going to see it used for trinomials, but you can use it as a binomial, but I have to show you how. Okay? So first of all, we got to move this into equals 0. So we're going to move this 6x over to the other side. So we get 3x squared minus 6x equals 0. Alright, so this is what we got. Okay? Because it has to be in an equals 0 before we can start labeling our A, our B, and our C. So our A is 3, because that's in front of the x squared term. Our B is negative 6. And our C, well, there's not one, so we're going to put a 0. That's what you do when you have a binomial. Okay, you put your C is equal to 0. Alright, my dog is freaking out over here. She's trying to get off the bed, and she's old, so she's scared to jump. So hold on. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So we're going to just plug in what we got here. X equals negative B. Okay, negative B. I'm just doing the formula here. Negative B, which is a positive 6. A negative. So when you negate a negative, it becomes positive. Plus or minus the square root of B squared, which is 6 squared. Oh, negative 6 squared, sorry. Minus 4 times A, which is 3, and C, which is 0. All over 2 times 3. Okay? So let's simplify that. 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 4 times 3 times 0, 0. All over 6. So we can simplify that again. 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 all over 6. And then simplify again would be 6 plus or minus 6, because that's the square root of 36, over 6. And then you break that down, okay, you get to this step, sorry, and you get 6 plus 6 over 6, so that equals 12 divided by 6, which equals 2. And then 6 minus 6 divided by 6. You gotta do 6 plus and minus. And that becomes 0 divided by 6, which is undefined. No, 0 divided by 6 is 0. Anything divided by 0 is undefined. Sorry. 0. So 2 or 0. Those are your two. I like to circle them. You can box them. Whatever. Your two solutions. So let's do number 4. Okay, we're gonna do number 4. So I'm gonna do it over here. A equals 5. Oh, look, we got to put this 4 on the other side. So when we do that, it becomes plus 4. Whoops, sorry. We got to put this negative 4 on the other side. When we do that, it becomes plus 4, so that it equals 0. All right. So now we have A. We're not doing this one. Okay. A equals 5. B equals 9. And C equals 4. So then you just plug it into your formula. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Alright, so what does that simplify to? Negative 9 plus or minus 81, the square root of 81, minus 5 times 4 is 20, times 4 is 80. All over 10. So we can figure that out now. 81 minus 80 is just 1. So negative 9 plus the square root of 1 over 10, plus or minus, which is negative 9 plus or minus 1, because the square root of 1 is 1, all over 10. So if I break that down, I get negative 9 plus 1 over 10, and that is negative 8 over 10, which simplifies down to negative 4 over 5. And then my other one is negative 9 minus 1, because you got to do plus or minus, all over 10. So that equals negative 10 over 10, which equals negative 1. So negative 4 over 5 and then negative 1. Those are your two solutions. Okay, so I realize this is a little bit more lengthy work, but it's not that hard. Once you get it all plugged in and you find your A, your B, and your C. So let's look at the homework. Okay. I'll do number 1 with you. The formula is written for you at the top. We need to figure out what our A, our B, and our C is. First, we need to see, is it equal to 0? Yes, it is. So our A is 1. Our B is negative 5. This is your B. A, B, C. Okay. And our C is negative 14. So now we'll just plug that in. 5, because a negative becomes a positive, because it's negative B, plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 14. All over 2 times 1. All I did there was just plug in what I have here. Gotta plug in my computer so it won't stop working. Okay. Alright. So let's simplify that a little bit. 5 plus or minus 20, the square root of 25 minus 1 times 14 is negative 14 is negative 14 times a negative 4. Negative 4 times, negative 4 times negative 14 is 56. And it's going to be positive because it was a negative times a negative. Okay, all over 2, which is 5 plus or minus the square root of 81, all over 2. So now we can simplify this. 5 plus or minus 9 over 2. So now let's break that down. 5 plus 9 divided by 2 equals 14 divided by 2 is 7. And then 5 minus 9, because it's plus or minus, over 2, that's going to be negative 4 over 2, which is a negative 2. So your answers are 7 and negative 2. Alright, so I want you to make sure you go through here. I'm going to go ahead and label your A, your B's, and your C's. So make sure you're good. So pause it right now, go through and label your A, B, and C's, and see if you get the same thing as me. And then I want you to start working. Sub that into the formula and solve, and you're going to get 2 answers, one with the plus and one with the minus. Your B plus everything over 2A and your B minus. So pay attention to number 7. It is not in equal 0 form. So you got to move that 4 over. Okay? Alright? So that's what I want you to do, is these 3 problems. Just 3, 5, and 7. That's a 5. And if you have questions, let me know. And I'll be happy to help you. I'm going to meet with you guys on Tuesday about this. So let's do a whole, instead of doing 3 different classes, let's do a whole all-call algebra meeting just one time, and I can mute you all, and if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and ask for a question. I can work out different problems for you. So that way we can get that done one time, and so I don't have to meet with 3 different classes, and everybody can just meet all together. That'd be great. So let's do it on Tuesday at 11 o'clock. Okay? Tuesday at 11. I'll see you then, all 3 classes, and let me know if you have any questions. Alright, guys, have a good day. Miss you guys.